Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC Stargirl. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do think it's kind of interesting, the confrontations we get. First and foremost, Isaac showing up at Yolanda's job, confronting her, like being kind of a creepo. First and foremost, bringing up the pictures of like, oh yeah, the pictures you saw, took of yourself. Yeah, everyone saw them. And then he's like, I know what you did, like what you did to my parents, which obviously just Cindy feeding them BS because, like, right, they had nothing to do with your mom, your dad, nor your mom. Like, I mean, if anything, like, your dad was, that's a whole thing, but it's like, they had absolutely nothing to do with your mom whatsoever. But, you know, he's so filled with rage, and he's letting, like, Cindy pollute his mind. I mean, to be fair, Calypso's kind of polluting all their minds anyway, Cindy's included. But then you have Artemis going after Beth, which Beth already going through a rough time because she's trying to talk to her dad. Her dad's like, I don't want to have those conversations without your mom. I'm like, when are you going to have this conversation? Because even Beth is like, right, like, you guys are acting like your jobs are more important than your marriage. I'm like, what's going on there that you guys are doing that? Because it's like, I mean, I guess it's just kind of like, right, we don't want to have the complicated conversation we're going to have, but it's like, you keep putting it off, and you're putting Beth in a worse and worse position, because it's like, he's like, it's going to be okay. She's like, no, it's not. I'm not okay with any of this, and it's not going to be okay. She's not going to have a chance to figure things out, figure out her feelings about all of this. I mean, she knows how she feels, but, like, you're not giving her time to really process and understand what's going on, because to her, it's just, like, out of nowhere, because in her mind, it's like, right, her family was this picture-perfect family, and then it's like, oh, like, well, lo and behold, now it's like you're getting divorced out of nowhere. It's like, you, like, her mind can only wonder, like, what is it? What could it possibly lead? Like, you guys are just so in love. It's like, it's, everything seemed like it was fine 1 second, and then immediately everything's like, not okay, you're getting divorced. It's like, maybe it's been a long time coming, and just Beth wasn't, they maybe did a really good job of just hiding the signs, or maybe just Beth was just so blissfully ignorant, because she's like, no, my family's great and everything. It's just Artemis showing up at the wrong time, which Artemis is like, oh, do you know what it's like to have your family be one way 1 second and just have it turned upside down? She's like, actually, yeah. It's like, no, you don't, because she thinks Beth's family's like, oh, your family's just so perfect and stuff like that. It's because of you, my parents are in jail. I was like, well, first and foremost, your parents are super villains. First and foremost, let's throw that out there. It's like, right, your parents are like super copacetic about going to jail and everything. So, like, why are you like? But it's like, once again, I think it is just kind of the Eclipso thing of it's corrupting their minds. Of like, I mean, to be fair, they're teenagers, so they're not going to be rational anyway. They're not going to think. They're just going to take Cindy at her word. It's like, but I guess it's like, right, you haven't lied to us. You're telling us the truth about it. I guess that's all it is. But once again, I think some of that shade of Eclipso kind of like glossing over some of you, like, kind of give, because his whole point is to basically make you give into your darker nature. So what's already there, he's just basically taking that seed of darkness and hate that they have, you know, and just like spreads it. Like, because Artemis already had major anger issues, he just like fed into it more. Isaac kind of has no one. He's always been the loner, and now he doesn't even have his mom anymore. So it's like, you just feed into that more. So I think that's what it is, because I was about to say, like, your parents are the way they are about it. Like, shouldn't you kind of reflect the same thing? Especially because, like, right, we don't want you to have the same life to us. But I guess it's like, regardless of anything, you took my parents from a criminal or not. It's like, whatever, you know, it's like your parents are still your parents. So each of them had that encounter. And then you had, like, Mike trying to figure out what he wants to do, like trying to help Pat and everything. It's like, he's like, oh, I'm helping, like, put like chainsaws on like Stripe, so like you can help, you know, make a weapon or something for Stripe. Which I love. 2 things. One, all those stop signs from Thunderbolt. I was like, okay, I'm glad we got an answer to that. I guess it's like, right, they all just got taken to the, someone had to go back and pick them out, like just some city worker, and dump them off at the scrapyard. But I also love, we see the toaster that Yolanda had to throw out because she clawed it up last season with Wildcat Claw. So I think that's so fascinating. Just like a little, and Mike's looking like, huh, and just toss it. I love that. But then, like, Cindy coming to find him, I thought it was like, oh, I'm here to recruit you. It's like, oh no, you're just bait. I was like, that's interesting, because I thought, oh, I was like, oh, like, why would I want you amongst our ranks? You're kind of useless, but you serve one purpose, and that's bait. I thought him joining the team would be bait, in the sense of like, right, I'm gonna use him against you. I didn't know it's just like, no, he just purely is bait. I thought she was gonna try and twist and control. I was like, no, she thinks Mike's useless, and because in her mind it's like, right, you're just as useless as your dad, because it's like, oh, like, he just got allocated to sidekick and stuff like that in the old school JSA, and so like he kind of gets lumped in the same thing with the new school JSA. So she's kidnapping him. Pat, I did like, Pat and Courtney ran into Cameron. I thought like, oh, the way he was looking, like, because obviously we know because of the last episode, his powers are kind of like either slipping out of his control or growing to the point like he can't control them anymore. Because maybe they manifested on smaller levels, but not to the point like he completely freezes over like Icicle. He probably hasn't reached that point yet, but he's on the verge of that maybe. But he showed up, it's like right after wasn't it Paul, the teacher, last episode, like after what happened to him, it's like, what are you guys doing here? It's like, oh, we offered to clean up. And it's a picture that he drew of Cindy with the Black Diamond, and it's like, right. It's like, yeah, she's back in town as God, Cameron says, which for him, it's like, why do all these bad things keep happening to good people? Which I think is going to be so interesting when he finds out the truth about what his father, granted, he's not, dude, it's going to complicate things between him and, Courtney, because Courtney likes him, but it's also like, right, your dad was a supervillain. Not just a supervillain, he was a murderer, and he was going to try and mind control the entire, like, well, a good chunk of the nation, and then spread it to basically get the world to go the way he wants it to. Like, I don't know, your dad was on some mega super villain, sociopath level, megalomaniac type of, like, lane, but I mean, it's not going to, once again, it doesn't change anything. Your parents could be a criminal or whatever. It's like, they're still your parents. At least, obviously, it feels like that when it comes to, Cameron and Artemis, but, regardless of all that, that's not, I mean, once again, it's like, he killed people in the JSA, so it's like, not like he was a good person, at least, amongst a lot of people, but specifically in Jordan's case, so, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, like, because eventually he might start, well, because this is kind of the worst time to having, like, negative emotions, like the darkness in you. That's what Eclipso's feeding off. So this is the worst villain to be dealing with while everyone's dealing with their own darkness. Because, like, the fact is, Rick's always kind of got his issues. I think everything with his parents, it sprouted a bit of darkness in him. So same thing for Yolanda. She's dealing with the whole brainwave thing where, like, she killed him. So, like, there's that. Bev's got her own darkness in the form of, like, probably, like, secretly kind of pissed at her parents right now. So, like, that could get manipulated and used against her. But, like, it's a touch of darkness in all of them. Like, it's kind of like, here's my Kingdom Hearts reference. Like, there's darkness in every heart type of thing. So, like, it kind of puts him in a whole new, like, playing field of, like, right, just any darkness in anybody could potentially be used against them and also, like, as fuel for him. So that's a whole thing, so... But I did like that Courtney and Pat decided, like, right, we're going to meet you back at the pit station. And then they both kind of look at each other like, right, I can't believe, we really are gelling as a team and also as father and daughter because we're saying the exact same thing at the same time. But Pat gets ambushed by Isaac and Artemis, which I even thought was interesting because even before Isaac could finish him off, Artemis is like, no, he's still my dad's best friend. I'm like, or at least my dad's friend. I'm like, that is weird. Like, you're willing to attack him, but it's like, no, don't kill him. My dad won't be too happy about the fact that we killed his friend, so... Because I think for her, it's like, even knowing her dad's a villain, it's like, my dad obviously knows about Pat and everything, was still at the game with him and everything, like everything was fine, so I guess she's not thinking too much of it in that regard. But their main thing was destroying Stripe. That way they don't have, like, because that also, like, gets rid of one of their heavy hitter backups, so. But obviously the team gets together and they're willing to, like, all right, it's time to handle this, especially when Courtney gets the call from Cindy of, like, right, I've got Mike, and she's like, oh, I'm like, Cindy's blaming her for everything. It's like, what? Your choices are what led you there. She's like, you don't know me. It's like, yes, like, but, like, your beef with Courtney has nothing to do with everything else. Like, everything you've done was but basically what she wanted and everything. It's like, everything in my life kind of imploded because of you and your other pals, specifically you. So it's like, I'm going to come after your family. I'm going to come after your friends. I'm going to make them suffer. I'm going to watch them suffer, and then I'm going to get you. So, but obviously, Barbara sends her own away and is like, right, go kick that girl's ass. I like that showdown, though. Like, legitimately, that was a sick fight. I mean, they were outmatched to begin with. I mean, sadly, Beth doesn't have full access to, obviously, Chuck, but she can access certain aspects of the goggles. She was able to make Artemis, like, pause by showing her stuff of her her parents, like, oh yeah, they're captured and stuff like that. But it's like how they cut between the fights, and it was actually so seamless. Like while one person does a flip, it hard cuts to someone else. Like it transitions, like cuts into someone else, kind of finishing the motion in their fight. I'm like, that was just from a choreographed standpoint. Once again, Courtney's fighting style is so sick. The fact is, like, she has the staff like levitating. She pushes herself off the wall, grabs the staff, pushes like Cindy. The staff into Cindy, like they're pushing her against. I was like, I trip over it so much because like I think she has such a unique fighting style. Like you're basically fighting with a magic staff too on top of that, and it just incorporating that into like her athleticism. It's just so dope. But like, freaking Yolanda going toe to toe, like bouncing between Artemis and Isaac, which obviously like that. I'm surprised that it turned more piercing than what I would have expected, because it's just shockwaves. I'm surprised it didn't turn into literal, like, I guess in some cases you consider that like a wind shear, kind of like Motherland, Fort Salem, to kind of use a more recent representation, like what their wind shears can do. I thought it was going to be something of that nature, but it's like, yeah, it has impact, but it doesn't have like well, it can be used for slicing, but he just never did. He just used it more so as attacking, because I don't know if he was necessarily, I don't know if they were going for the kill. The whole freaking bathroom brawl between Artemis and Rick was dope, like smashing into stuff. That was, dude, like top to bottom, that fight and just how it was handled. And I love that it was a good chunky fight. It was so like I said, just the choreography for it, and just like everything happening was just so awesome. I love that Cindy thought like, oh, she'd handle things. It's like, nah, Courtney put in the work. I mean, to be fair, like, Courtney worked you over last season. I don't know what you thought was going to be different this season. Like, she, you know, even to the point, took a break from your fight and backed up the rest of the team, like, knocking, like, Isaac off balance, as well as knocking Artemis off balance. Rick, like, bends her bat and, like, pushes her against the wall, and it has, like, the bat stabbed into the wall that I kind of keep her in place. And then Yolanda was able to rip Isaac's violin, so it's like, yeah, no weapon for you. So it's like you guys had your tails handed to you, plus Mike showing up and bashing Shiv, Cindy over the head. So it's like, wow, that didn't go the way you wanted it to at all. But then the shade shows up because Barbara called him. It's like, I don't know if this is the right move to make, but, you know, kids might be in danger, so you... And he made, I guess, a convincing enough argument, knowing what she knows about Eclipso. It's like the Black Diamond, so it's like, just give it to him. Like, we don't know what side. He claims just to want to destroy it, but he rolls up and is just like, oh, kids, that's enough playtime. And Cindy's like, right, I know what I'm doing. He was like, if you knew what you were doing, you wouldn't be basically using that as a means for a little high school gang fight. Because it's like, that thing is a lot more powerful and there's a lot more going on with it than you know. But Cindy thinks she's got it under control. And in that moment, Eclipso was like, oh, he's afraid of me and stuff like that. And then it activates and takes control of her. Because he wanted to absorb Courtney's soul last. I was wondering why. Maybe it's because amongst all of them, like, maybe it's supposedly because the Cosmic Staff is basically like, using a Kingdom Hearts reference, it's like the Keyblade. It chooses someone. Because I actually made it season 1. I made the comparison between like her feeling like she was unworthy of the staff and why the staff chose her. It's very similar. Like there's a parallel you can draw between like her story and Sora's story from Kingdom Hearts in that regard of like, right, I fought my way here to Keyblade, like, you know, but he wasn't technically the chosen one. That whole thing. But maybe that's what it is. Like the staff shows like, right, she's pure of heart. He needed someone pure of heart. Like I guess it needs to be like, it has to be someone of like a bright light, like all the darkness, he needs to absorb a certain amount of it, and then maybe he needs a bright enough light to counteract it. So maybe it needs to be a darkness and a bright light to break it. So like the moment the staff hit the jewel, it shattered, and your boy Eclipso escapes. And I wasn't, because I think I'd seen pictures online of what he looks like. I think like live, I don't know whether stuff leaked live action wise, I don't know. Because I definitely feel like I'd actually forgotten, like I know what he had looked like, but it still kind of caught me off guard because he looks very impish in a certain regard. I don't know, like an imp is like the first thing that immediately comes to my mind. I never realized it till now, but I'm like, would you be like similar to a trickster? Which I mean, Which I mean, when I think trickster, I'm thinking of like, well, I mean, because obviously, like, every mythology has its own tricksters. Like, obviously, you have, like, Loki, who's the god of mischief, who's a trickster. But then you have, in, like, Japanese mythology, you have foxes. They're typically associated with being tricksters. And then there was that, sadly, short-lived show called Trickster. That's pulling from a specific indigenous, mythology. So, like, you know, so I was wondering if that's what, Eclipso's circumstances could be seen similar to. But I love that, like, Cindy's like, no, you're meant to me. It's like, she's like, but he's like, oh, I used you, you used me, and then proceeds to rip the blade out her arm. I was like, yikes, ugh, and she's screaming in pain, and he's like, you used me, and I used you. And then, like, he took the blade, threw it at Isaac. I was like, well, at least he's still writhing in pain. He's good. But it's like, oh, I smell the evil in your soul. It tastes so good. I was like, hoping someone would intervene, but nope. Sucked up Isaac like it was nothing. And, like, I was like, are you going to just suck up his soul and his body's going to be his own? Oh, there's literally nothing left of his body, which makes you wonder, is, like, that what happened? Like, once again, we got that at, like, the beginning of episode 1. I'm wondering if that's the same thing that happened to that little girl. Maybe that's kind of a similar thing, but man, that was rough. Once again, it's like they were in this fight because they just wanted revenge for their respective parents. Like I said, like, I think Eclipso just kind of dived into the darkness in them, and then, like, the Shade tried to fight him, but he was like, I think I misheard. I couldn't hear the line clearly, but I think he said, "Your powers come from my home." I think it was that. Or not, unless he was saying your powers come from my own. But I think he said home and not own. But then, like, kind of moved past the Shade's powers like it's nothing. Even though he took down the new JSA like they were nothing. And just, like, grabs him by his sides and then tosses him aside and he flickers away. And you're like, what the hell is that about? Later on, he pops up in the floor. He's just kind of, like, hurt badly. And he tries to get up and then he starts fading away. I'm like, oh, like, did he do such a number on you, you legitimately can't stabilize yourself in this world? Like, he does have his own, like, shadow pocket dimension, so I'm wondering, like, did he have to go back there to kind of recover for a while because he can't keep himself in this world? Like, it's hard to, like, stabilize the body in the condition that it's in. But, Rick got tossed aside like it's nothing. The only one who could do some damage was Courtney from the staff, but immediately the staff went dim. So, like, either, like, his darkness is so great that it dimmed the staff afterwards, or maybe it's just it overloaded the staff system. I don't know what to 100% make of that. But before that, I should also talk about Cindy. You actually kind of feel a little bad for her. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, like, part of you is like, like, you wanted her to stop, but it was kind of, like, heartbreaking to see her circumstances, especially because you feel, having gotten a little insight into her circumstances, it makes you feel a little bad for her, like the whole thing with her mom and her dad hunting them down and stuff. Like, you feel bad for Cindy in that moment. Like, that pool of darkness, like, grabs her, and Courtney's trying to hold her. She's like, please, don't let me go, Courtney, please. So you actually, like, legitimately in that moment kind of felt bad for Cindy. It's like, is she dead? No, I think whatever place that, well, no, because I was about to say, like, wherever Dr. Midnight is at, but it's like, no, like, that's a separate situation. But not less so, not once again, like, because of that statement from Eclipse, so it makes you wonder, like, there might be some connection. So, like, she might be in some pocket dimension right now being held. Like, she might not actually be dead. Isaac is super dead. You do notice, like, during all that, Artemis does run for her life. So, obviously, in the aftermath, it's like, you know, legitimately, like, this is actually kind of almost like a perfect time for this part of the story, too, to a certain extent. I mean, because this part of the show is going to overlap into October, and, like, this whole Eclipso thing, like, how scary he is, especially him taking on the form of that little child again, that he took out on form of, like, I don't know if that's, like, a specific form he took of, like, oh, like, I possess this little kid, and that's going to be my human body, like, from now on, or whether that's just kind of, like, once again, that kind of trickster thing of, like, oh, I'm going to pretend to be something I'm not. Like, here I am, like, this is just his general go-to form to trick people in all the time he's existed type of thing. I don't know. Even Mike saying at the end of all of this that, he wants his, like, right, because without any, he needs to properly be trained now. It's like, right, we can work on Stripe. He's like, no, I want my own Stripe. Like, in this moment, I couldn't do anything when it came to Cindy. And, like, obviously with this threat coming, I want to be able to help. I need to be able to help so I'm not a liability, you know? So, because he's like, this is something straight out of a nightmare. Because no one knows what this is all about. I'm wondering, does this have any connection to what Barbara and Pat know. Maybe there's still, maybe even this caught Pat by surprise. Like, it's hard to say like what he knows in this moment, because he was like, wait, so everything was like that, everything, not just Cindy, but even the JSA being manipulated into this fight was for the purpose of bringing him into this world and stuff like that. It seemed like Pat was kind of caught off guard by that, but maybe not. Because, you know, maybe all that he knew was specifically related to the Black Diamond, connected to, obviously, Eclipso, but maybe, like, this is still, like, we haven't touched the surface of what's so scary that he didn't want to tell the kids, or maybe it is related. I don't know. Because he, like I said, he could just be faking it. Like, him and Barbara probably just don't want to drop the information yet, considering, like, things just keep changing and shifting and getting more and more dark and depressing. Because at the end of the day, you know, the others are kind of deciding, like, what they're going to do. Like, Rick even has, like, a broken rib. He's like, I'll be fine. But it's like, right, they got to find Eclipso and deal with him. Because even Yolanda's like, right, even Isaac was just a troubled kid. He didn't deserve to die. But Calypso does. It's like, right, I hope you are careful about that. Like, that intention, that darkness inside of you, he already kind of used it against you with Henry and Brainwave. So that could be darkness that ends up feeding him. And I don't know. I'm curious to see what role Cameron plays in this, because he might be like a frenemy, in a sense that, like, he's an ally / enemy. Like, he's like, oh, I'm not with you guys, but if it means stopping this greater threat, I'll help out. Not unless Eclipso kind of somehow manages to get him on his side, which is there's a possibility for that. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things take us going forward from here. You know, how will the staff be okay given enough time? Like, is it just kind of basically unconscious, or does it just need time to rest? Will the same thing happen if Courtney goes toe-to-toe with him again? I mean, granted, he's going to be feeding on more people, so the more people he feeds on, the stronger he gets. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.